Okay, I'm testing out my microphone. It looks like I'm live. We've had some internet outages in our subdivision, and I wanted to make sure that I was able to get online. So I'm a couple of minutes early. For those who are joining us, welcome everybody. As you know, I'm a mother to two adult daughters. My daughters are 33 and 26. And of course, when you have adult children, they delight you with grandchildren. So I have grandkids, and so this makes me really, really busy this time of year. And so one of the things that my daughter decided to do this year is put her first Christmas tree up in their new house. And so, of course, we went over there and we decorated, but she didn't have a tree skirt on Saturday. So I said, uh-oh, time for a tree skirt. And so I'm going to show you, I whipped together a pattern for a tree skirt that you can make in less than an hour. This is like last minute tree skirt. You'll be able to make it in a bunch of different sizes. And let me go ahead and get started. This is the easiest tree skirt you ever made. All right, so the first thing that I want to show you guys is a handy dandy. I'm going to share my desktop so you guys can see something. Hi everybody, look at all these people joining us tonight. So you should see my desktop right now, and where I placed this is under Quick and Easy Gifts. If you go to the bottom of my page, it says Fast and Easy Christmas Tree Skirt. There's a handout that you can open that looks like this. It has a supply list. So for this tree skirt, for the big one, you need 1 1/4 yard of a print for the top. You need 1 1/4 yard for the back for the lining fabric, and a spool of coordinating ribbon for the ties. If you're going to do bias binding for the edge, I'm going to share some math with you. Okay? So the first thing that you need to do is you need to decide what size tree skirt you want to make. And so, of course, I've got a handy dandy math chart because I like math. Yes, I'm one of those people. And so I always create these visual guides for myself, and I have a binder in my sewing room, and I keep them as reference sheets. So I make these when I have time. And so the first thing that I want to talk about is the parts of a circle. So the radius is going to be important because that's the distance from the outside of your tree skirt to your tree trunk or to the center of your tree skirt. And then the diameter is how wide you want that tree skirt to be. Now, I also added a little bit of information about circumference because that is all the way around the tree skirt, and you need to know that if you're adding binding. So if you want to make the full size tree skirt, you're going to need 1 1/4 yard of 2 different fabrics for a 42-inch diameter tree skirt with a 21-inch radius. So the radius is half of the diameter. And so that's the easiest way for you to remember. If you're going to make a 30-inch skirt, you're going to need 1 yard of 2 fabrics, 1 for the lining and 1 for the top, and so on and so forth. I have a 24-inch diameter skirt. For those of you who have those little skinny pencil trees, you need 7/8 yard of 2 different fabrics. And of course, I've listed the circumference on there for you. Now, tonight I'm going to show you how to make a 10-inch diameter tree skirt because my granddaughter also wanted a tree skirt for her little tiny tree that goes in her bedroom at my house. So I'm going to show you how to make this using the 10-inch diameter skirt only because it makes it easier to do all of it on camera. So tonight I'm going to show you how to make a little tree skirt without the piping on the outside, just a simple skirt. And I'm going to be making it in the 10-inch diameter. The process is the same for all of the skirts, regardless of whether it's 10-inch, 24-inch, 30, or 42-inch. Okay? All right, you're going to start with a square. Regardless of what you need, you're going to start with a square for your top. So whether it's a 42-inch diameter skirt, a 30, a 24, or a 10, you're going to start out with 2 squares. In this case, I want the diameter of my skirt to be about 9 inches, so I'm starting out with a 10-inch square. So always give yourself 1 or 2 inches of excess so that you can trim and you can have a seam allowance. So for my little tree skirt, I'm going to have 2 fabrics, 1 for the top and 1 for the lining. You could make this reversible and put 2 different prints, and then you can switch them back and forth. All right, so this is the first thing that we're going to do. You're going to take your fabric, and these have step-by-step directions, right? You're going to find the center both directions. You're going to fold it into fourths, and then we're going to draw a line. So that diagram is part of the printed sheet, and if you want to know where the diagram is, let me show you where to find it. So the diagram is on my website, and when you click supply list and handout, it has the diagram on the second page. So if you see the diagram, it shows you where to find it. Find the center is step 1. We're going to measure from the folded edges in step 2. We're going to trim and cut out the center, and then we're going to be left with a circle that's cut from the edge down to the center. And so you'll see how I do that in just a minute. But that's what we're working on. So that's where you can find this handout with the diagram. And I created a diagram because I'm a visual learner, and most people are. And so I can just follow my steps. And these are exactly the same for every tree skirt. The only thing you need to remember is the half measurement. So for example, if your tree skirt is 42 inches, and this is going to be a 42-inch skirt, then these are 21 inches. If you notice, it says 21, right? So if you want a 30-inch tree skirt, then these would be 15, and if et cetera, et cetera. So you just take the measurement of your tree skirt from one edge all the way to the other, right? That's your diameter. And then you cut that number in half, and that's your radius, and that's how we measure, okay? So that's all the math I'm going to stick in your head tonight. But that's just simplified math. I went online on one of those little handy-dandy math calculators and made my own chart a long time ago. So that's what I'm sharing with you. All right, so you're going to find the centers by folding it in half and folding it in half again. And you can press it if you want to. You don't have to. I just find that it's easier, so I'm just going to take and press both of those so that I can find the middle, and it makes it easier to trim and cut this. The full-size tree skirt I'm making for my daughter is going to be made using a charm pack that I had left over. And what I did for her is I made a giant, if you want to see it, a giant piece of fabric with all of these squares, and this is going to be her tree skirt. But I need my dining room table to spread this giant piece out. But this is the full-size skirt, and I'm going to be making this one tonight as soon as I'm done with this baby for my granddaughter, is I'm going to make this big one, and it's super, super quick. The sheet with the different sizes is up in the links. It's in the top of the chat. I will post it on the website in just a little bit, okay? So when I get off of here, I will post that on the website, right underneath where it says handout. So you just fold your fabric into fourths, right? Your cut edges go to the outside, your folded edges go towards you. So this is the cut edge, folded edge, folded edge. And this is super important that you don't confuse those. And so I always clip mine. I put a little clip on my folded edges because this is the sides that I do not want to cut. So I have my folded edges over here. Open side, folded edge, folded edge. And now I start measuring. If you're going to do the big tree skirt, my suggestion is for you to use string and tie that to a pen or a marker. And this is just how I do it, just because it makes a nice even tree skirt. I don't know where I learned this, maybe in home ec sometime, a million years ago. But I'm going to take, and then I'm going to tie it, and then I'm going to measure what I want for mine. And so I want it to be 5 inches. So I'm going to take, and I'm just going to hold this pen like this, and I want it to be 5 inches. So I'm going to hold it with my finger, and I'm going to put it right on the tip. And now I'm going to make a nice even mark all the way across. And that just allows me to have a nice even circle so that my circle is not a big egg or it's lopsided, right? I'm just taking this marking tool that I made for myself. Like I said, measure it so that it's 5 inches. And then I'm going to lay it here. You can pin it. You can use whatever method you want to anchor it. And then I'm just going to use that pen like this so that my circle is nice and even. I always start with a lining because I figure if I mess it up, then it's fine. And so there it gave me my line. You can go over it with a darker marker if you want. I always start with a pen. But just so you can see my line, there's the line that I'm going to follow. And these, again, are my open sides. And then I'm just going to cut along that line. So I'm going to cut it off. And this is for the miniature tree skirt. This is a little 10-inch diameter. I'm using 10-inch squares for this. You won't see any of this, so don't worry about those lines. So there's my circle. So when I open it up, I have a nice shape of a circle. And so that's the first part. And I can now take and lay this down on top of this one and use that as my measuring guide. And so I just always make my lining first, and then I can take and lay this on this one. You can pin them together and then trim them, or you can just clip them, whatever you want to do. I just put a couple of clips on either side. If it's a big one, you can just use pins and clips and it'll do the same thing. And now I'm just going to cut right along this edge. And make my little second circle. And so now I have two shapes that are the same for this little mini tree skirt I'm making for you guys. It's for my grandbaby, but yeah, like I said, string, a little bit of cotton string, and a pen or a marker is perfect for making whatever you want. And so that is why I have that handy dandy chart that I made for myself. And so if you remember, it says, here, let me make it bigger. So for a 10-inch skirt, I needed a 5-inch radius, right? So that's the distance in my circle from the outside edge to kind of the middle of that circle was my radius. So that's why I put it on my chart, because I want to know what my radius is so that I can draw that line for my tree skirt. Now remember, the circumference is that outside edge all the way around, and that's what I need if I want to do binding on it. So that's why I made myself this little handy dandy chart, and I'd be happy to share it with anybody who wants it, and it'll be posted on my website later. So you can download it. As soon as I get off the lab, you'll have it. All right, so now I have this, right? These two pieces. You go back to the two camera view so you can see now that I have these two pieces, I need to cut my centers out. So I need to decide how big of a circle I want, right? And the tree that I'm going to put around it has a little tiny skinny trunk because it's one of those little baby trees. So I'm just going to take my thread and I'm going to use 1/4 of a spool. You can measure equal distance from here to the outside edge. So if you want your circle to be like 5 inches, you would measure 2.5 and 2.5, and then do that same little semicircle I drew. If you want to do it that way, if you're doing a big one, or if you're making this little thing, it's a little tiny tree skirt, you can just take a spool of thread and draw around that and then trim that off. And I want to make them both the same, right? Like I said, this is going to be a tiny tree. You're going to measure 2, 3, or 4 inches depending on how big your tree trunk is that you're going to be using. But I just want a little circle because this is a tiny tree skirt. I'm going to cut from the center out to the outside in one area, just like this. And I'm going to do the same thing with this here. I'm going to cut from the center to the outside, just like that. What does she have on the tree for ornaments? Little tiny pom-poms and lights. So she has little teeny tiny pom-poms, and she has little tiny gingerbread cookies made out of felt on there. Okay, so now I have the lining, and I put these pretty sides together. And I have to decide how many ties I want. You can use regular grosgrain ribbon. This is inexpensive. If you don't want to use grosgrain ribbon for your ties, you can always use bias binding. This is 3 yards of bias binding, so I could actually do a 24-inch skirt with this bias binding if you wanted to do like pretty piping all the way around. So this stuff works great if you want to get fancy with your tree skirt, but remember this one's fast and easy, so I don't even need that tonight. So I'm going to take some ties and I'm going to make them about 5 inches long, maybe a little bit longer. So I want them to be the same distance as the radius. So whatever your radius is, that's what you want, so you can make cute little bows. So I'm going to do 5 inches. I'm going to add a 6-inch on there for my ties. So I'm just going to make a few of them. For each side, I'm going to make 3. So I need a total of 6. So I'm just going to go really fast. And you can add however many ties you want. You can add no ties if you don't want ties. You can even skip that step if you wanted to. Or you can add 2, 3, 4. I like 3, 1 up here, 1 in the middle, and 1 down low. For the little tree skirts, the bigger the tree skirt, the more the ties you're going to want. So you're going to want them about every 3 or 4 inches just to make it look pretty and decorative. But I'm going to do 2, 4, and then I need 6, so I need 2 more. And I don't even have to be super fancy about it. And look at how quickly this little tree skirt is coming together. All right. So now we have the little ties, and I'm just going to pin those inside. Can you guys hear me? Is the volume high enough today? Or am I too far from my microphone? Sometimes my microphone volume gets adjusted. Can you guys hear me now? Is that better? All right. So now I'm going to take and I'm going to lay these in here. And I'm going to just pin them in place. So I have these little tiny pins, and I'm going to pin them in place away from my place where I'm going to sew them. So I'm just going to pin them like this. And I'm going to stitch these down. And you can put them wherever you want. I'm just going to put them here. I'm attaching them with these little micro pins. Boy, I tell you what, the older I get, the less I want to use these little tiny pins. It's time to switch to bigger pins, huh? And you're just going to pin those in place. And you're going to want to make sure that these are spaced evenly. So you can take and just measure and mark. I'm eyeballing this simply because this is a little tiny child's tree skirt. And it's little and it's fine. So once I have those in place, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly sew down both of those sides just to anchor them in place and make sure that they don't go anywhere. And so let me go show you what I'm doing on my sewing machine. So I'm going to take and I'm just going to sew these little ribbons in place so that they don't go anywhere. So let me move my hand. And I'm just straight stitching, straight down. And that's just so that they don't go anywhere. I'm going to flip that around and I'm going to come down the other side and I'm going to stitch that in place because I'm not going to want to bury pins inside there. And so I'm sewing about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. I'm just anchoring those really well. Remove those pins as I go. Never run over your pins. Always sew with your pins away from your needle. And so that's the first step, is you're just going to anchor all of those little ties to your tree skirt. And mine are going away because when I bring them this way, they're going to end up more secure. They're going to be hard to pull out of there. And so that's why I'm folding them in that direction. So now I'm just going to take these and I'm going to move them out of the way like this. You can put a single safety pin in there if you want. But I just want them out of the way because I'm going to be stitching all the way around. And so I'm going to take and move these out of the way. And you're going to be doing the same thing with your large skirt as I'm doing with this little baby skirt. All right, so that's out of the way. Making sure that these don't get all bunched up. And then I'm going to lay this piece on top. Remember, pretty sides together. So this is kind of my ugly side because I can see the pen markings. And so I'm going to take, and now I'm going to pin this entire thing together. Let me use some better safety pins. So I'm going to pin this entire thing. If you wanted to add batting to this, you most certainly could to make it fluffier or puffier, but you don't need to. You can use any fabric you want to make tree skirts. Can you guys hear me now? Can you guys hear me? It looks like my microphone is working, but. And so now that I have this all pinned in place, I'm going to sew all the way around. Starting here in the middle, and I'm going to sew all the way around. I'm going to leave a segment that's open. So I'm going to leave myself an opening over here. I'm just going to leave myself maybe about 2 inches for the small one. For the bigger tree skirt, you're going to want about 3 or 4 inches of an opening. Okay, so it's when I turn to my machine. Alrighty. So it must be the microphone inside my other camera that's not working well. Let me see if I can fix that. Can you guys hear me now? I'm just going to move my microphone closer to the machine. There we go. Okay, so now let me go ahead and I'm just going to show you how I'm going to sew this, starting from the center and go all the way around. And actually, can you guys hear me? When you sew this, you're going to want to sew with about a larger or more generous seam allowance than a quarter. I usually do about a little bit less than a ½ inch, a little bit bigger than a quarter. And then I've got to stop and back stitch and pull that out of there. All right, super easy. Like I said, you can make a big tree skirt in less than an hour because you're just using ribbon for the ties. You're going to cut it. It's going to be easy. Now that I have my tree skirt, the one thing that I do want you to do is you're going to have to trim these curves in here because otherwise your tree skirt won't lay flat. So you're going to want to come in here, and anytime that you have inner circles like this, you're going to want to clip so they lay flat. And I just do that about every ½ inch. Clip into that seam allowance, not a lot. And then on this outside, you're going to want to do a few snips. You can use pinking shears for this and trim close. I don't find that it's necessary to use pinking shears, and I like to leave the big seam allowance because I want to come in and I want to top stitch this to give it a really pretty finished edge. I'm doing it like this because I'm not using batting and I don't want to put binding on here. I want to make this fast. All right. And so it doesn't take, like I said, very long at all. Set up in your dining room because this requires space if you're going to make a great big giant quilt. And then we're back to the opening. So now I'm going to fish my finger in there. I'm going to be careful because I have some pins. And I'm going to fish this out. I'm going to trim these corners where there's excess fabric. Just kind of angle it like this. These two corners just so that I get a sharper corner like that. And then I'm going to stick my finger in there. And I'm going to use a crochet hook or whatever and turn those out. I'm going to try not to stab myself. If you have safety pins, those work better than regular pins, so you're not poking yourself. So whenever you can, use safety pins for this process. You're just pulling it out and turning it inside out. Like I said, if you want to use batting, you can. Just make sure that your batting is slightly smaller than your diameter of your circle, and then that will ensure that you don't have too much bulk in those outside seams. Now look at this, almost done. And we've only been online 28 minutes. Like I said, you can do this literally in 1 hour. And if you see that it doesn't lay right, then that just means that I didn't clip enough. But I just pressed the heck out of this little tiny thing and it's fine. That other pin came out. And I'm going to use these straps to pull it all the way. And you're going to want to stick your hand in there and just smooth it all the way around. If your tree skirt, like I said, is bigger, you're going to want to leave a slightly bigger opening just so that you can get in there and push those seams out. So you're going to push outward like this and flatten that seam. I always like to take and run my finger like this on the inside of that seam, and that makes a nice flat edge. You're going to start pressing close to that opening, because you're going to want to press this closed just like this. And like I said, you can whip stitch that closed with your fingers. I'm going to top stitch this entire thing. So I'm going to use pins, these big long ones, after I get all of this pressed down. Like I said, if this center won't lay perfectly flat for you, then you just need to go in and clip it a little bit more. But I'm going to use this to kind of push my crochet hook, a chopstick, whatever you have. I'm just pushing that so that those corners are nice and crisp. You guys can see me, I'm just pushing those edges. And see how mine is not wanting to lay flat? That's because I didn't clip enough. I got too much of a hurry. But you know what? This is a baby tree skirt, so it's not critical. If you're making a big skirt, make sure that you spend a little bit more time clipping that middle. Me, I'm making a baby tree skirt, so I'm going to press the heck out of it and starch it like crazy and call it a day. One of the tips that I can give you when you're closing a hole on the curve is water. And I know that seems kind of odd, but and the other thing is pin like crazy. So one of the things that I do is I starch it and I pin it so that it's nice and smooth. Also use a pin. If your seams right here on this edge don't want to come out, stick a pin in there and pull it towards you like this. So just take a pin in that seam right there and pull it outward towards you before you press. You can use a nice big corsage pin. And pull that out so that it lays nice and flat and circular. Now this one is going to be a little 10-inch diameter tree skirt, but you can make yours any size you want. And one of the tricks that I use when I close it is definitely some starch and some water. And so now I'm just going to press it where it didn't want to lay flat, and now look, it's actually just laying flat. I'm going to use a little bit of starch there in that keyhole opening. Like I said, I'm going to call it a day. I'm not going to get too worked up. Move those ties out of your way. If you use ribbon, just be aware that ribbon is made of different materials and it can be melty. So don't leave your iron sitting on those ribbons. And so just lay that flat. And bring that in. Same with the other side. I use those ties to pull that edge out. Look. That is not wanting to pop out. So same thing, you're just going to take your needle and you're going to go into that seam and you're going to pull it toward you like this. Easy peasy. And just take some of that fabric and pull it away from that seam, and it'll make a nice crisp edge right there. And just press the heck out of it. And this is going to be the little tiny tree skirt for my granddaughter. Her little tiny mini tree. And so this just comes together, and I'm going to tie these like you tie a little pair of shoes and make little bows for this tree skirt right here. Like I said, you can make these bigger or smaller. Whatever kind of ribbon you want. I'm going to tie these so they're not in my hair when I am sewing the outside edge. So I'm just going to tie them like this, just like you would a little kid's pair of shoes. And you make those little bows. Do what you want them to do. And this is laying pretty flat. I like how this is laying. It says cookies for Santa. You're going to want to use a lot of steam or starch is fine on this because this is not a quilt. This fabric has been pre-washed. Everything in my stash is pre-washed, so it's not going to shrink. But I'm just going to make one more little bow. I don't even know if this is how you're supposed to tie bows, but this is how I do it. So I have 3 little bows tied. It'll keep it around the tree. And now I've got to deal with this section right here that's still open. So what I do when I have something like this is I take and I push the seam allowance a little bit at a time from the top first so that it's not all crooked. And I just take it, this sounds really gross, but I lick my finger and it helps me to roll that under so that it's not nice and flat. And so I'm going to take and I'm going to pin that in place like this. And then I'm going to do that again. It's really gross. I'm going to lick my finger. If you don't feel like licking your fingers, you can always just take a little bit of water in a spray bottle or a bowl and do that. And then I just take and I put little pins in there about every so often. And that keeps it nice and rounded so that it's not all flat. And I just have a little section in the middle. Like I said, I just lick my fingers. I've seen Jenny Doan lick her fingers, so I know other quilters do it too. At first I used to think I was the only one. But when I saw Jenny Doan licking her fingers several times, I'm like, she's a finger licker too. And so there you have it. That's how you get that nice rounded edge, is literally just teasing the fabric because it's a bias. Let me remove that giant pin, that tiny baby. And now this is ready. And I'm going to just start sewing. I'm going to top stitch it here. And I'm going to go all the way around and finish here. You don't need to top stitch the middle. And this is the little tiny tree skirt that's going to go on the baby tree. And so I think that this will look really cute. And like I said, I don't actually have to top stitch it, but I will to close it. But you could use your decorative stitches if I wanted to. I could put a little bit of piping on here, or if I wanted to get really fancy, I could do like a binding edge like this all the way around. But this is going to be just a little tiny decorative tree on a dresser, so I'm not going to go to all that trouble. But there you have it. I'm going to top stitch this baby, and then I'm going to start working on the big one. I'm going to go full screen so you can see. So for the big one, I have a 40-inch square that I made using just charm pieces, right? And so that's going to be the tree skirt. If you don't have a single piece of fabric that's 40 inches, then you can always, this was a charm pack that was in my sewing room. And so I'm going to fold it in fourths and go lay it on my dining room table and measure it just the way I did the little. And I'm going to put ribbon on there that's bigger. And I have the same thing for the backing. Is I have a great big giant square. I used 1 1/4 yard for the backing, and this one's going to be a 40-incher. So this is the liner, and this is, it looks like a baby quilt. This is the fabric for the top, and so that's going to be my daughter's tree skirt. So the big one for the big one, and the little one for the little one. And I'm going to sew this one, and that is it. Super, super, super easy, friends. Take your leftover scraps. These are just 5-inch squares. And you can make an adorable tree skirt literally in an hour. And so this is it. I will post this right here on my website so you can see it. I will put it in the Facebook group so you can download it by one clicking it, and you guys are going to have the handy dandy reference. If you have any questions, always leave it in the comments. Share stuff with your people. I made this as a special request for my daughter, and as always, whenever I do something for my girls, I share what I put into my Google Drive with you guys so that you guys have it too. Will I use batting on the large one? Yes, I am going to use batting on the large one, and I'm going to use bias piping on the outside. So the large one's going to take me a little bit more time, but like all moms, I'm going to be up late tonight working on stuff, last minute things for my kids for Christmas. All right, everybody, you guys have a wonderful night. Don't forget to share my channel with other people. I make all kinds of things, and I bring you guys along for the ride. You guys have a wonderful week. Merry Christmas. I will see you guys next Sunday for a live stream. I'm going to show you guys how to make the easiest scrap quilt ever, and you guys can see I've already started it behind me. So I love you guys. Thank you for joining me, and you guys have a wonderful, wonderful week ahead. Bye-bye. Try not to stress about the holidays too much. Bye, everybody. Bye.